Hey there, welcome to this masterclass on the 5 steps to preventing divorce for high-value men. And this is part of a series of masterclasses, and I'm glad you're here. I am going to tell you first what I'm going to go over in this class, and then we'll riff through it. I want to really get right to the point here, because if you're inside of this class, then maybe you're actually in the pain of facing possible divorce, or maybe divorce is actually on the table. And what I've discovered is that it's possible to turn it around. I have developed methods, and that's what I'm excited to share with you. And I won't tell you too much about my own backstory. You can look at other episodes on my YouTube channel for that, or you can look up my book, Alive on Purpose, on Amazon. But basically, I've been through it myself. I've been through a divorce, and it was hell. And as a men's coach and therapist, I've seen many men in the living hell of what life is like after the divorce, especially when there's children involved. And what I realized was happening over and over again was I was seeing that therapy wasn't working for a lot of men, and especially couples counseling. A lot of couples counselors out there don't know what they're doing, and they sometimes can do more harm than good. So if you're serious about preventing divorce, mastering your married game, then you're in the right place, because I have the keys, codes, and tools to help you get there. And ultimately, the promised land here is that if you master these steps, which are less like steps up a ladder, but they're more like a 5-pointed star, because you need all 5 of these steps to be ongoingly reinforcing each other. The promised land is ultimately being the man your wife desires. Being the man your wife desires, and being the connected dad your kids love. And avoiding divorce, preventing divorce. They say prevention, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And this is especially relevant because 75% of divorces are initiated by women, and most of those come as surprises to men. So you can't coast. If you're married, if you're inside a relationship, you cannot assume that just being a provider and a protector is enough. You don't just meet your woman's needs for safety and security. You also need to meet her need for seduction. And that means, mastering the relationship, the bedroom, the bank account, the day-to-day, the laundry, the dishes. They say it's never about the little things like the laundry or the dishes or the details. It's always about deeper unmet needs in each of you. So ultimately, the secret is to show up as a superior man. And when you become the man that you desire, when you become the man that you could become in your next level, in your fullest expression of your potential, then there's no reason your woman would ever want to leave you. So this is about stepping up your game in terms of fitness, faith, finance, and family. All 4 F's. Those are the 4 frameworks or 4 kingdoms that you pay yourself in every day to continue to build as a king in your kingdom. And first, I want to say, I'll come back to them. I'm going to dive into the turnaround method, but it starts with making the decision and slowing down to really speed up. They say you need to slow down in order to speed up. And as you go and learn, you need to make space for new information. So which way should I pivot my chair here? So the first step is reset the frame. And when I say reset the frame, what I'm talking about is your relationship is a frame. It is a container. It is a container for the two of you to be in. And when the container is not solid, when it's being threatened, then you need to reset the frame. And resetting the frame means looking at your communication and basically your terms and conditions. You are the frame and she is the art, and the love between you is the art. And so strengthening the frame means getting clear on knowing your terms and being able to communicate the agreements. What I like to say is that the number one downfall of relationships is unconscious expectations. And when there's unconscious, uncommunicated, or poorly communicated expectations, which is includes assumptions, then things are going to start to get out of balance, and things are going to start to get ugly. So if the first step is to reset the frame, then the core shift is to move from unconscious expectations and assumptions into powerful agreements. Because in our adult selves, we are living in an agreement field. When we are in our adult selves and we are in our king and she is in her queen, then we are sovereign. And sovereigns live not in a messy realm of adolescence or childhood wounding or what have you, but a sovereign lives in the realm of agreements, of clean, clear agreements, so that you know your yes and you know your no and you know your terms. And in order to bring her up to that place, because you're growing and evolving together, you need to firstly be clear on what your terms are and what you're okay with. And that means doing some asking what it is that you want. Basically, I like to see the patterns, and the patterns are, I see three types of men. The first type is the spectator, who is like a victim. He just believes everything is happening to him. He's not paying attention. He's not taking ownership. The second type of man is the tire kicker, and he's just thinking about it. He's putting it off. He's avoiding it. He's like, yeah, he knows what he needs to do, but he's not in integrity. And the third type of man is the action taker, the man who sees what needs to happen and he steps into action and he shows up, and he knows that what needs to happen through him, and takes full ownership, not only as him, but through him. So that's part of stepping into resetting the frame. And in jiu-jitsu, which I've only been training in for a year, but beginners start like this and their frame is all flailing. But when you really get into it, your frame on the jiu-jitsu mat is your arms, forearms, and knees, because you don't want anyone to get in there and choke you out or isolate a limb and submit you. So your frame is, in an embodied sense, it's your terms and conditions. And you need to know what those are and be able to enter into that renewal conversation of the relationship with courage and a willingness to face conflict. A lot of the patterns that modern men are facing is collapse, sedation, avoidance, and ultimately not wanting to face conflict and slipping into nice guy syndrome, slipping into sedation and victim and avoidance. So the more we gain courage to have and provoke courageous conversations, the more we're stepping into leadership. And when you're in leadership, the relationship goes better. You can actually lead the communication, open up those uncomfortable conversations that you need to have about sex, about money, about budgets, about time, about the day-to-day flow of life inside of your togetherness. So that's the first of the 5 steps. The second is repair hurt. So inside of this step, we want to look at conflict and where you need to take the armor off. Basically, I like to say there's 2 types of bravery. One is to put the armor on and go out to war. And then the second type of bravery is being willing to take the armor off and sit naked in the truth, sit naked in the mess and vulnerability of what it means to be human, and to love, and to open your heart, and to have needs, and to be in that journey with that woman in your life. So repairing hurt is a skill set that requires ability to have uncomfortable conversations, and do that in a way that is free of projection. So you're not projecting your wounds onto her. So often what we judge in the other person is something in ourselves that we need to look at. And that's when things get really grindy and uncomfortable, and all of the toxic kind of adolescent trauma stuff comes up. And what I like to say is that in trauma work, they say there's trauma vortexes. And a trauma vortex is what happens when we get out of our center, and when your trauma and her trauma overlap, then you're in a real troubled spot. And that's when you go down the toilet bowl of acting out and being a childish little twit and acting like that. And maybe she's acting like that too. So the remedy from a resilience and trauma standpoint is to find the fulcrum and the lever that puts you into the resource and into the healing. So that could be different for everyone, but the resource and the healing is whatever brings you present, whatever brings you into your sense of wellness and power. And sometimes it's as simple as calling a pause. To calling a pause, capturing this moment. There's an old samurai saying that it is unwise to put fatigue and the energy of fatigue on important conversations. So if you're talking about, your life and important conversations that are hard or uncomfortable, or, sex or money or unmet needs, then if you're too tired for that and you're not communicating well, then capture that and say, you know what, this is too important to talk about when we're not resourced, and create a time and space where you can. And that brings me to the second part about repairing the hurt. Is one of the most common patterns for couples in the long haul is becoming like roommates and having a sexual polarity that becomes, depolarized. And then you end up not being in a polarized attraction field, but you fall into a swampland of depolarization where you feel more like roommates than desirous lovers. So that's another part of creating time, is following the protocols of dating your wife once a week minimum, and also setting time aside for 3-hour sex dates where you just let go of your whole to-do list and create a sacred space, and you go into that place of healing, because sex isn't just sex. Sex is like super glue when it comes to attachment and healthy attachment. And ultimately, sex is like soul food too. And we don't just need it because we're needy, but it's intelligent design of the universe that puts men and women together in this way. So repairing the hurts, also something I need to mention in the context of infidelity. And I'm not going to get into it today, but I do have a whole roadmap called the Roadmap to Recovery from Infidelity, because I have guided couples out of that kind of trouble, because it's more common than you think. It happens, and it creates another layer of armor around the heart and mistrust. So what I will say about it is that the core task of repairing the relationship after infidelity is repairing trust. And that can't happen overnight. There's no silver bullet for that. That takes commitment. But if you believe it's possible, and if both people are committed, there is a roadmap that I walk couples through to work on building that, what that road could look like. And sometimes what happens is it's such a a pivotal experience that couples get the opportunity to actually look at why the infidelity happened in the first place and what it was that wasn't working. So sometimes infidelity can be an opportunity to completely renew the commitments and actually rebirth the entire relationship. So it doesn't necessarily spell the end of the world. I mean, it could, and maybe that's for the best, but there are ways. So if that's coming up for you, then reach out to me privately, because I would be happy to have a conversation with you about a specific 3-month premium couples coaching package that I've developed for recovery from infidelity. So that's resetting or repairing the hurts. And one of the poetics I like to mention here on the step of the hurts is that there's 3 bodies in your relationship. I mean, technically there's 2, but the way that David Dita likes to talk about it is that there's a one body practice when your meditation and your embodiment is about, feeling fulfilled and complete and whole in yourself. And that's a one body practice. That's self-love piece, that self-respect piece. And then the 2 body practice is what happens when you come together. And that's even more challenging, maybe, but also more exciting, because then you get to find another octave of wholeness, which is your wholeness together as 2 bodies. And there's more needs. There's her needs and there's your needs, and there's eros flowing between you. And there are the barriers to eros, right? The mistrust, the conflicts, the hurts, the need for better communication. But there's also a 3rd body, and the 3rd body is what the old poets used to write about. And the old poets would write about the synergy of the 2 bodies. And the synergy is that transpersonal field, that God force, if you will, of the spirit of love that initially attracted you to each other. So that when you're looking at repairing the hurt and resetting the frame and renegotiating your sovereign contract with each other, is important to keep in mind the 3rd body, the spirit of love between you. And then you're titrating between your own needs and your frame, and then the bigger, wider frame of the 2 bodies, and then the 3rd frame of just the spirit of love, And when I use the word mastery, I'm really intentional about it, because today we're talking about relationship recovery, because we're in the context of preventing divorce. But the true sort of next level is mastery. Mastery is a word that gets thrown around in the marketplace all the time. That's a little faded, but you can see it. What I mean by mastery is love, is the mastery of love, because love is the master. And if we're on the path, and we are students of that force that is unique to each of us. So just to be clear what I mean by that. And ultimately, we are in an era where there is not a lot of successful examples of men and women having marriage. Marriage has been on the decline for decades, and that things are trending in a different direction. So to actually figure out how to make this work and not make it so many easy outs is, to me, the true test and initiation of adulthood, is to be able to stay in your purpose as a man, anchored in what you're here to do and who you're here to be. And that's a faith piece. Just to get into the faith piece, it's like with God, all things are possible. I think that's an old scripture, and I believe that. So that brings us to the 3rd step. Let's go into that. So lighting the fire. Lighting the fire is about making the decision, and it's an act of faith, and it's an act of seeing the vision of the future self that you are becoming. In order to make marriage work, to prevent divorce, a man needs a plan. You need to be the man with the plan, and that plan is your vision. And you need to see what's possible and work on the vision. If you're stuck and you don't have a vision, then your purpose is to get your vision clear and figure it out. These days, the way hyperinflation is going, part of the vision is figuring out your business plan, like how you're gonna make it all work, because sex and money are entwined. They're entwined in this conversation of love and marriage, is sex and money. And you have to be able to have those courageous conversations. I was talking with a fellow relationship coach who also is an accountant. She has two roles, right? She works with couples on money issues. And we were talking about how, inside of the conversation of relationships, there's this question of love languages. Most people have at least heard of the different 5 love languages or popular series of books about that. And that's one thing. But another thing is everybody has a money language. And money, like sex, is an area that is so taboo in the larger social sphere that it brings up all sorts of hidden fears and feelings that are sometimes not even our own, but stuff we've inherited from our parents or from the people who raised us. And so looking at your relationship with money as a language in itself is useful when you're inside of marriage, because money is one of the big areas of conflict that can lead to divorce when there's different visions and different habit patterns. There are 3 main areas that I want to inspire you to create courageous conversations with your wife about in the context of preventing divorce. And one is rules. One are the rules and agreements that you want to recreate. The second one is roles. Like, how do you see yourself? What role do you see yourself in? Yeah. And the third is your vision. Like, what are you doing together to see where you want to go together and talk about it, get excited about it. Maybe make it part of your intention to invest in learning about money, because you both have a vested interest in your future together. So, having those courageous conversations, bringing them out of the shadows. I like to say there's 2 marriages, and this is an old psychotherapeutic story. That the first marriage is the one that's in the church or in the holy room, it's the mosque or the synagogue, what have you. And it's the classical one everybody thinks of, husband and wife, holy person, blessings, exchanging vows, tears, family members, relatives, 2 families come together. The second marriage is the one that I'm concerned about in the context of preventing divorce. And the second marriage is the one that's happening in the basement of the church. The proverbial basement of the church is the unconscious. So those are the unspoken expectations and shadow contracts, shadow soul contracts between the couple. Like I said, it's never about the dishes or the laundry or the details. It's always about the deeper unmet needs. And inside of the basement marriage is all of the unconscious expectations. So in order to dig deeper and find out what's really going on, you need to put your shovel in the ground and you need to explore what's in there. What are the unconscious assumptions in your relationship? Like for instance, who initiates sex? Who pays the bills? Who plans the meals? Who, fixes the vehicles? Who plans the holidays? Who thinks ahead more? Whose job is what? And this is the question of roles. And when you fall into them unconsciously, like we naturally do, we just set into some habit patterns. resentment can build if we don't actually shine a light into those patterns and say, is this working for you? Like you act like it's working, but is there some unspoken resentment? So stepping back and taking time to invest and retreat as a couple is also essential, and just renewing yourself. I like to say, when you have a weekly date your wife protocol, that date with your wife is not the time to go over the laundry list of things you need to do to look after your household. That's a separate meeting. Have that meeting too, but the date is just to enjoy each other, to just let go of the list and do something fun. So we're at the third part, lighting the fire. I wanted to also talk about that in terms of faith, because when men come to me inside of crisis, personal crisis, professional crisis, and that they need to find a way, and sometimes they don't even believe it's possible, but you need to believe. You need to believe that it's possible to do the impossible. One of my mentors likes to describe it as winning impossible games, that this whole game of personal growth and evolution is an infinite game of winning impossible games and doing the impossible. So you need to believe, even if it feels impossible in your guts and in your bones, and you need to be able to move beyond your comfort zone and take action into creating what's never been seen before, because that's an act of faith. Faith is believing in something that nobody else can see. And that's your vision. That's your vision of your future self. That's your vision of your life together. So you need to light that fire. And if one person in the relationship makes the decision and says it's possible and is certain in that, it can save and turn around a marriage, even if the other person is flailing. Here's another agreement I want to invite you to insert into your marriage. And it is that you do not, you agree to not threaten the container. When I was talking about resetting the frame, you don't threaten the container. So you can't, even if you're in a moment of conflict or, passionate fighting, a lover's quarrel, you can't say, well, if this doesn't happen, I'm out of here. Or if you don't do that, I'm out of here. There's times to use that, but that's a very extreme move. And it's going to threaten the integrity of that third body, that container. If somebody has a serious addiction that needs to change, yeah, there are times to bring that out. But on the day-to-day, if you're working around shortening the time between your conflicts and the power of repair and the power of pause, if you're going to shorten that time span and get better at traveling together through life, then you can't be threatening the container. You need to not do that, and you need to make that agreement mutual. The fourth step is to become solid, and this is for men, and this is masculine communication, and this is mastering masculine communication. And so what I'm going to talk about in this step is about the dynamics of sexual polarity and masculine and feminine communication. And what we are looking at collectively these days is an inversion. It's an inversion of the patterns, where we actually have, I wrote a post about it that got a lot of attention last summer, called "A Lot of Boss Girls and Nice Guys," where we get a lot of agreeable nice guy syndrome men and a lot of really empowered boss women who are used to being in charge. And so we're in a dynamic time of recovering the primal, instinctual communication that will allow men and women to be happy together, to be fulfilled together. So we need to look at this inversion, and men need to pick up their core masculine fire and learn how to lead, learn how to show up in that dance, lead like a lighthouse. And so I say this means being solid or becoming solid, because the metaphor is that you need to be like the shore. You need to be solid in yourself like the shore, so that when the woman, in her natural gift as a water being, with more emotions, changing and connected to the moon, she's like the ocean, and she's going to come in sometimes chaotic, sometimes angry, sometimes changing in her moods. And you need to be solid for her. You need to be contained for her. You need to not be a doormat and get walked on. You need to stand your ground and be respectful of yourself and of her, but you need to create that container. Maturing masculine leadership is all about containment. And so being solid is about letting her intensity crash into you and being able to handle it, staying with her intensity, like to a point. And that's the point of loving containment. And when you can do that, when you can show up, reset the frame, and be the solid shore and lead like a lighthouse into the dark, she'll surrender into a feminine radiance and into her natural feminine essence and gift. And that will free her and allow her to be opened, and soften. And what we have these days is, well, what Robert Bly used to call soft male syndrome. And we need men to become strong again. And so that's the becoming solid piece, is mastering a style of communication that isn't so much cerebral. It's not about ideology. It's not about academics. It's not about feminism or anything like that. It's about instinct. It's an embodied instinct of how men and women show up together, and how to create the communication that leads her in a way that helps her feel safe, helps her trust you. And ultimately, she does that because you trust yourself. You trust yourself to lead. So ultimately, what this is, this whole conversation of preventing divorce, recovering relationship, and stepping into mastery, is it's a training. There's a lot of guys who figured out how to make money, or they figured out how to do a lot of things. But when it comes to relationships, it's like they're in kindergarten, or they didn't get shown an example of one that worked and a communication style that was solid. So this is an opportunity to train. And the promise, like I said, is to be the man your wife desires. And I want to also unpack the term desire, because desire and intimacy are not the same thing. Intimacy is when you're looking deeply into someone else, and they're seeing deeply into you, into me see. The intimacy is about truth. And sometimes if the communication in a relationship gets so intimate and everybody's seeing inside each other and communicating in their process, I mean, that's valuable and important to have those skills, but it can go too far the other way, and it misses the force of desire, because the force of desire is an embodied instinct, and it's like a fuck force where two adult people want to just tear each other's clothes off and like go wild like animals, and devour each other. So that actually is a completely different. That's what I mean when I say desire. So that's the instinct piece. And in order to become the man your wife desires, you need to become the man that you desire. You need to be the man you respect and love, and you need to open up and step into that next level. So that's the real secret, is you got to go first, love and respect yourself to that next level with such a commitment to your purpose and such a strong, secure attachment to who you are, that strength and confidence and certainty brings her into you and brings her into your certainty and secure attachment. And what that means is ultimately power, purpose, and posterity. And by posterity, I mean wealth that lasts beyond you, intergenerational wealth, and the long-term legacy of your family and who you are as a together family. If that's something that is what you want. The final step is sharpening the axe, and that's just Stephen Covey's term for investing in yourself, and that's a lifelong learning commitment. You know, if you're not growing, you're dying. If you're not learning, you know, you're not living. So sharpening the axe also implies you can't do it alone. If you want to do something you've never done, then you need to invest in relationship with mentors who know that, they've done that, or they do that, or they specialize in that. And it's a different mindset when you see what you want and then you invest in the relationships that are going to put you in a better position. Yeah, because if you want to get fit and strong, then you hire a fitness instructor, somebody who's fit and strong. If you want to master your money game, then you follow and study mentors who know how to make a lot of money. And if you want to win in your relationship, you can't just flail around expecting to figure it out yourself. You need to invest. You need to put yourself in the position where somebody's got your back. And because leadership is not just a one category area where you get to show up in your life one way, but not in the same way in other areas of your life. How you show up for one thing is how you show up for everything, is another old Stephen Covey saying, but especially for men, in terms of the masculine core energetics of presence, of claim and penetration, you need to see the bedroom, even the bedroom and the joy that you bring into sex as an area, an untapped area for personal growth, because how you penetrate in the bedroom and how you create and step into that mastery as a lover is a hologram of how you penetrate the world with your purpose. And that's the name of the game for me in terms of men, is purpose first. When men know who they are and know what they want and know why they're here, and they're connected to the purpose the creator put in their soul, then they become bulletproof, they become unstoppable. And that's a never-ending infinite game of working on it, playing with it, and enjoying it. So that's about all I got for you today. And I'm looking at the time and we're doing good. That looks like a good time to wrap up. So I'm going to stop the recording and then maybe we'll open up to some